In this video, I will show you how bad it can be if you made your domain model depend on current time. That is a well-known code smell. It will limit the capabilities of your domain model in more than one way. I will then show you how you can resolve that issue, how you can improve your domain model so that it does not depend on time explicitly. The time will not just happen to your model. You will be able to run the model at any time that satisfies the needs you have, like implementing time-dependent unit testing or implementing such wonderful features as a what-if analysis. What if somebody used my application tomorrow? That is the kind of questions we will solve in this video. So let's get to code. This is the sample application I'm developing, a bookstore which lets the users borrow books. When I press the borrow button, nothing will happen, but that is the feature we will implement today, and as you may already guess, borrowing the books will depend on time. This is the post HTTP method handler. We will borrow the books there. I will try to find the book, and then we need to model the process of borrowing books. This class will do the job. And of course, you guessed that this is the class, this is the domain model that will depend on time. The only service it will provide is to borrow a given book. Now, let me do some mandatory housekeeping. The composition root, I will introduce the singleton service, add the dependency to the page, inject it through the constructor. This is boring. And the page will just delegate the call. Guess what? The page is done. I don't think I will do anything more in this place. The rest of the development will be focused here. So that is one good thing that already happened in this development. That is the beauty of domain modeling. Everything that is important will happen here in the domain model. So we can focus, and we should focus, on making this part of the application as good as it gets. And now it comes, the borrowing time. There will be an artifact that I will need to produce, a borrow artifact, which is a proof that the book was borrowed. And it requires a timestamp, you see? When I get back to the model, the problems will begin because now I need current time to be able to initialize this new object. And so to cut the corner, I might read current UTC, and that will cause issues. How do I unit test this class? What if some tests are dependent on small discrepancies in the timestamp? Concurrent access, concurrent borrowing of the same item, what will happen? How do I test that? I don't know. What if analysis? What if a certain number of people borrowed books with a certain statistical distribution? How do I implement that? I have no idea. This class just does not support any kind of variation of time. It simply depends on what time the computer says is now. On top of that, you know that some programmers are not sure when and why they should use UTC now. They sometimes use now and then pass your local time that is susceptible to issues on a leap day, on a leap second. I want that encapsulated as well. So at this point we start solving the problems. This class is too rigid. It is connected to a static service that we cannot vary whenever we need variation. This class is not cooperative. This is the service that I will use to tell me the time. So the idea is to introduce a service, and this is the only method that this service will expose, a method that guarantees to always return a UTC timestamp. I want to inject this service through the entire application so that nobody ever asks for current time except the topmost caller, which is coordinating the execution. That will be a controller, for example, that receives requests from the web. So I will let the borrowing system depend on this time service and then use the service to obtain current time. This implementation is testable. If I wanted to test how it behaves at certain time points, I would just inject a concrete implementation with a fixed time that it serves and write the unit test the way I wanted. And it also supports the so-called what-if analysis, which is an important part of many business applications. What if the application or the domain model were used at a specific time? How will it behave? What responses it will generate? This implementation supports all that. So we only need to supply concrete implementations of this service and the application will be complete. Before that, if you liked this video so far and want to help me spread the word about it, please press the like button. Thank you. Now let's implement concrete implementations of this time service, like the one that wraps a real dependency on time. Now you can see where that datetime.utcnow has gone. Into a specific class specialized to only doing that and nothing else. So if datetime.utcnow is what you need in a particular scenario, inject this service and that's it. Now, one counterintuitive idea that I want to show you here. In many business applications, it is really not advisable to let the time flow during the transaction, during processing of one request. You can freeze the time when you start processing a request. We can provide a new concrete implementation of the service, which is modeling time freezing. We could initialize it from datetime, and we could even validate the kind of the time. So again, if somebody misused the datetime class and used now instead of UTC-now in this application, this service would stop propagation of that bug. It would just fail. The invariant that the application must use UTC in all timestamps is now preserved. It is encapsulated in this service. Or conveniently, freeze another time service. Very useful service, I think. Eventually, this service would always serve the same timestamp. So you would initialize this service once when the request begins and use it through the entire request. Good news is that nobody in the system will have no idea that you're doing this. Everything you have to say happens at the configuration stage in the composition root, the program class. For one thing, the borrowing system will now be scoped. There will be a new borrowing system object with every request. The UTC time service will be a singleton. It is always asking for the current time, so it can be a singleton. But actual time service that we will use will be the freezing one, and I will need to provide a factory method for that. Now, all the requests made to this web application will actually execute with the frozen timestamp through the entire request. In the end, I only want to run the application and to show you how it works. I will borrow a nice little book, go to the log, and read what it says. Here, it is using the freezing time service. At this specific time, that is when I pressed the button, and that is when the book was borrowed. So it looks like everything works fine, and the entire domain model is free from references on datetime.utcnow static time service. I hope this was a useful lesson to you. Don't depend on datetime.now or UTC-now static services. Just don't depend on them in the domain model. Make your domain model flexible, and you will be able to use it and to simulate the time whenever you need, for example in unit testing. Thank you for watching and see you in the next episode.